Hello there, and welcome to Sleepy Coastal Vibes. Tonight, we drift toward the edge of the world, where land softens into sea, and every wave tells a quiet story. Together, we'll explore the most relaxing facts about the ocean, how its light, movement, and silence shape every living thing on Earth. The ocean has no beginning and no end. It moves with a rhythm older than time, shaping cliffs, carrying light, and whispering its secrets to the shore. Every tide that rises, every grain of sand beneath our feet, carries the memory of all that came before. Through the calm of the sea, we learn how the world breathes and how to breathe with it. If you enjoy these peaceful journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here, one drifting soul at a time. If you stand by the shore long enough, you begin to feel that the ocean breathes. The water advances and retreats again and again, with the slow patience of something far older than any living thing upon its surface. Each tide is a soft pulse, a movement so consistent that generations before us used it to count their days, to measure their harvests, to time the turning of the world itself. The rhythm of the sea is the closest thing Earth has to a heartbeat, a motion that continues whether anyone is there to witness it or not. Long before clocks or calendars, people learned to trust this rhythm. They saw the water creeping higher along the rocks and then slipping away, as if inhaling and exhaling through the edges of the planet. Twice a day, the ocean lifts itself toward the land, and twice it releases its hold again. This breathing is drawn by the moon, whose gravity reaches across the empty distance of space to touch every droplet of water on Earth. The pull is gentle, almost invisible, yet it moves entire oceans, drawing them upward like a slow-motion wave wrapped around the planet. As the moon orbits the Earth, the highest water follows it, creating a bulge that migrates continuously across the globe. Another bulge forms on the opposite side, where the momentum of Earth's spin carries the sea slightly outward. Between these two high points, water falls away, and coastlines enter their low tide, revealing stones, shells, and the hidden paths of small creatures. The movement is quiet, exact, and beautifully predictable, a conversation between gravity and motion that has never paused. If you could speed up time, the rising and falling of the tides would look like the lungs of the planet filling and emptying. The entire ocean flexes under lunar influence, the surface rising a meter here, 3 meters there, as continents pass beneath the traveling waves of force. On one shore, the sea recedes to expose silver mudflats glistening in the sun. On another, it returns, climbing higher along cliffs and harbor walls. Each coastline keeps its own tempo, determined by geography, depth, and distance from the equator, yet all are synchronized to the same celestial rhythm. For centuries, sailors and fishermen depended on that timing. They set out when the tide carried them gently toward open water and returned when the current turned them home. Whole communities learned to listen to the ocean's breathing, marking its phases in notebooks, carving its cycles into stone. In some places, the difference between high and low tide can be only a few centimeters. In others, it can exceed 15 meters, enough to strand ships on dry ground if they misjudge the hour. The Bay of Fundy in Canada, the Bristol Channel in England, and Mont Saint-Michel in France all rise and fall dramatically each day, a visible reminder of the moon's patient hand. What is remarkable is how precise this cosmic choreography remains. The moon drifts slightly farther from Earth each year, but the dialogue continues almost unchanged. Even when the sun joins the conversation, aligning with the moon to produce spring tides or opposing it to create neap tides, the pattern remains graceful and steady. It is as though the sea understands that its role is to keep time, and it does so with elegance. On quiet nights, when moonlight spills across the water, you can imagine the surface tilting ever so slightly toward that silver disk above. The light dances on ripples that seem to lean toward the sky, answering the same invisible call that has guided them for billions of years. Beneath the surface, the movement touches every layer, from the shallow coastal shelves to the deep continental slopes. Tiny organisms drift with the currents, rising and falling as the sea's pulse moves through them. Even the largest whales, asleep in their slow migrations, sway gently with that endless rhythm. Human beings are drawn to that steadiness. Perhaps it reminds us of the pulse in our own wrists, or of breathing in the dark before sleep. When you listen to waves breaking on a distant shore, you are hearing the outer edge of a planetary cycle that never ends. The soft hiss as each wave slides back into the next is the sound of equilibrium. Energy borrowed and returned, never wasted, never still. Our ancestors used that sound to navigate and to dream. They believed the ocean spoke in languages of pull and release, of give and take. In some ways, the tides are the first clocks. Long before pendulums or atomic vibrations, the world already kept time by the moon's passage and the water's response. Every 12 hours and 25 minutes, the ocean completes another breath. Twice a month, it deepens its inhale when the sun and moon align. Every 19 years, a larger cycle subtly shifts the pattern again. To the human eye, these changes are imperceptible, yet to the patient sea, they are the gentle turning of pages in an infinite book. The sand itself remembers these motions. Each grain rolled back and forth, polished by repetition, is a record of countless tides. The shells scattered along the beach, the driftwood carried to shore, the salt crust on rock, each is a signature left by water in motion. Stand barefoot on wet sand, and you will feel the world move under you, the tide pulling at the edges of the land like a slow heartbeat pressing through the floor of the earth. When scientists measure the moon's influence with satellites, they see the ocean's surface rise and fall in precise, slow waves encircling the planet. Yet no equation can fully describe the feeling of watching the sea return, of sensing that ancient breath move again. It's in that mix of science and silence where calm lives. The knowledge that gravity and water will never stop their conversation, and the comfort of knowing we belong to that same pattern of ebb and flow. And so, as the tide withdraws once more into the deep, you can imagine it carrying the day's noise with it. The waves slide out, taking thoughts, tasks, and unfinished words, leaving behind smooth sand and the faint gleam of moonlight. In a few hours, the sea will return, renewed, patient, still breathing. The earth will have turned a little farther beneath it, and somewhere out there, another shore will feel the same gentle pull. The ocean keeps the rhythm steady and sure, reminding us that time is nothing more than water in motion, and that all we ever need to do is drift along with it. When the tide has gone out and the shore lies exposed under pale light, the world beneath the waves awakens in silence. What looks still from above is a slow and patient realm, alive with movements so gentle they can only be felt, not seen. Here, time stretches differently. The pulse of the tide is distant, softened by layers of water and sand, and every sound arrives as a hum that lingers longer than its source. Beneath the surface, the ocean holds a second sky. Its clouds are drifting shoals, its stars the silver reflections of plankton and tiny fish. Light falls in columns, trembling as it descends, and fades gradually into blue, then into darkness so complete that color itself forgets to exist. Yet even here, in the quiet pressure of the deep, the sea is awake. Currents travel like thoughts through the mind of the ocean, slow, deliberate, and filled with purpose. They carry warmth and salt and stories, weaving through canyons that no sunlight has ever touched. In the shallows, life clings to stone and shell. Sea anemones open like slow flowers when the water returns. Crabs step sideways across smooth pebbles, leaving trails that vanish with the next small wave. Every ripple overhead bends the light into moving patterns that dance across their backs, as though the sun were painting the sea floor with motion. Each tide brings renewal. Nutrients lifted from the deep drift in with the flood, feeding the smallest plankton, which feed the fish, which feed the world. Even in stillness, nothing here is truly still. Farther down, where twilight begins, forests of kelp rise like pillars in a submerged cathedral. They sway with the current, bending and straightening with the rhythm of unseen tides. Fish move among them like quiet birds, gliding through green light. Every strand of kelp breathes, taking in the sea's carbon and returning the air we share. It is strange to think that half the oxygen we breathe begins in darkness, created by plants that never feel the wind, by life that never sees the sky. When daylight fades, the ocean exhales its color. The surface turns from blue to silver, then from silver to shadow, until it becomes one continuous mirror for the sky. The horizon disappears. Sea and stars merge into a single quiet thought. It is in this hour that the ocean begins to dream. Winds soften, and the waves lose their sharpness. Each swell slows until it becomes a slow motion of breathing. The tide still moves, but its edges are blurred, like sentences spoken in sleep. Somewhere far offshore, a whale rises through darkness, exhales, and sinks again, leaving only a ring of ripples that widen and fade. The sound of that breath joins the low hush of the water, a conversation too ancient for words. At night, the sea glows faintly with life. Tiny plankton, stirred by motion, release their pale blue light, constellations floating beneath the surface. Every movement, a fin, a current, a passing fish, becomes a stroke of light that fades almost as soon as it appears. It is as though the stars have fallen into the sea to rest. Sailors once called this light the sea's soul, believing it to be the ocean dreaming out loud. Even now, when we understand the chemistry of it, the glow feels like magic, energy turned into beauty, lasting only long enough to remind us how brief all moments are. Above, the moon moves in silence, tracing its path across invisible water. Its reflection ripples and reforms, never the same twice. The sea accepts this instability without resistance. It has learned that perfection is simply movement without fear. To the moon, the ocean is a mirror. To the ocean, the moon is a companion, constant, changing, and far away. As night deepens, sounds grow slower. The crash of waves becomes a sigh. Farther from shore, the water is calm enough to hear its own pulse. Bubbles rise through layers of salt and pressure, drifting upward like lost thoughts. Even the creatures that hunt or feed move differently now. Predators glide rather than chase. Small fish gather in quiet spirals for safety. The night rearranges behavior into harmony. In the darkness, everything relies on touch, on vibration, on faint traces of sound. Whales sing to one another through hundreds of miles of water, their voices bending and echoing through layers of temperature and depth. Each note takes minutes to fade. It is a kind of patience unknown on land, communication stretched across distance and time, shaped by pressure and silence. To listen to it is to remember that not all connection requires words. Closer to the coast, the water curls against the sand with a rhythm that never repeats, yet always feels familiar. The foam leaves white lace patterns that vanish as the next wave arrives, like thoughts forming and dissolving at the edge of sleep. In tide pools, small crabs and anemones rest, half covered in moonlight. Even the wind lowers its voice here. What remains is only the steady cadence of water returning to itself. Human eyes were not meant for such darkness, yet in it we see more truly. Our senses quiet. Our attention turns inward. The sound of the ocean becomes a map for breathing, in as the wave rises, out as it falls. Each cycle erases the clutter of thought, leaving only rhythm. The boundary between body and world begins to fade. We become the tide, moving and still, awake and dreaming at once. Beneath these waters, the deep ocean sleeps in its own way. Temperature and current shift almost imperceptibly. Sediments drift down like dust in a darkened room. Every few seconds, a small pulse of movement reminds the sea that it is alive. In trenches deeper than mountains are tall, faint life persists. Delicate creatures that glow and breathe at pressures that would crush stone. Even here, at the edge of the planet's endurance, the rhythm continues. Scientists once dropped microphones into the abyss and listened. They heard a low, continuous hum, the collective sound of billions of tiny life forms, of distant waves breaking, of the planet itself vibrating. It is called the ocean's background noise, but it is really the Earth's lullaby. It tells us that nothing is ever completely silent, that life whispers even in stillness. When dawn approaches, the first light appears not as brightness, but as color, a softening of black into blue, of blue into pearl. The stars dissolve one by one, leaving only the moon to linger over calm water. Somewhere, deep below, the sea stirs. Currents change direction, the surface warms, and the ocean begins another breath. Day will come, and the tides will rise again, carrying the memory of the night with them. But for now, the world is resting. The sea holds its reflections carefully, as if reluctant to wake. You can almost feel the curve of the earth turning under you, the water keeping pace with the heavens above. Everything that was in motion slows to a single idea: balance. In this moment, the boundaries between sky, ocean, and thought disappear. You are simply here, floating in time's quietest hour. So let the sound of the waves guide you. Let the slow rhythm of the sea match the rhythm of your breathing. Inhale with the tide's return, exhale with its retreat. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to change. The ocean is already doing the dreaming for you. And as it turns beneath the moon, patient and endless, it carries you with it, toward stillness, toward peace, toward sleep.